Dr. Paul Esqueda is no stranger to any of us. I think this is the third or fourth time he's come to talk about his homeland, Venezuela. Grew up in Venezuela. He went to his undergraduate in London, and then he came to the States and got his master's and PhD from Penn State, came to Berks County, spent most of his career there at Penn State Berks. He is now a professor emeritus from there, but when we met him, he was a dean running business, computers, and engineering, and was a good friend for us for many years. In fact, he was on our board for quite a few years and really helpful for that. I think you're all interested in finding out what is happening in Venezuela. What is the situation there? And so with that in mind, Paul, it's all yours.
Supposedly, I'm supposed to hit this here, and it comes. If not, I'll need help. Ah, okay. Here I go. Thank you. Ah, okay, thank you.
So you used to run computers, right?
I used to, right. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. I've always been an admirer of the World Affairs Council for their work and for their ability to bring international topics to the table, particularly politics and economics. So I'm a fan. So I'm pleased to be here with you. I just wanted to add that today Solomon asked me to be at Olive Valley High School at 8 a.m. So I come from Wayne, so I had to leave Wayne at about 6:30 in the morning. And then by about 10, we were done. And we needed to come here. And this is my main activity here. So I felt like when my dad was a farmer. So I used to work in the summers in the farm. So we would get up at 3 in the morning, do all the work till about 10, load up the truck, everything, and get everything out by 12. So I felt like I was in the farm today, you know. Anyways, David Hewitt contacted me back in November for this talk, and he asked me, you know, what would you title it? And we agreed on an update, Venezuela an update. And little did we know what we were getting into, because then come January 3rd, when the Delta forces extracted Maduro from Venezuela, from Caracas, and then everything changed. So, and what I had in mind for my talk also changed. And then things have been changing since then. I mean, you know, we thought, okay, Venezuela, now Venezuela is going to get stable. Well, right now, Venezuela took the back seat compared to the Iranian conflict. So, you know, that's still developing. Anyways, David alluded to the talks that I have given, and you know, I've given with this it'll be 6, but the reason why I put this slide in is because if you look at the evolution of the title of the talks, it went from, you know, from bad to worse. So, you know, it was Venezuela after Chavez in 2013, and then I had a title like Venezuela, a derailed democracy, and that was when Maduro was giving signs of becoming a dictator, an autocrat, and then 2020 was a year there was a kind of a light to move into democracy. So I talked about a transition to democracy, and then you know, I guess David and I gave up and said, let's just call it an update. You know, now. So when I was thinking about this talk, I had the question, so where shall I start? So I found this paper by a Venezuelan who wrote this article about Venezuela running on empty. His name is Miguel Angel Santos. The reference is there. And he published this on the Latin American Studies Association Forum in 2017. And you can tell by, I'm going to turn these around a little bit. So I borrow his line. So his first line in his paper, he says, where shall we start when it comes to describing the Venezuelan tragedy? And that's what I'd like to talk about. First, talk about the tragedy, then talk about the dark side of Maduro and his wife, and then finally talk about the after events of January 3rd. So Miguel Angel Santos says something. Do we start by saying that Venezuela is on the verge of becoming the only case of hyperinflation ever recorded in an oil-rich country? So this, remember, the paper is from 2017. And this guy is talking before, and he's just predicting what was about to happen. And then he says, or would it be more illustrative to mention that last year, Venezuela registered a tenfold increase in inpatient mortality, or a hundredfold increase in death of newborns. And all these while gasoline sells at a less than 1 cent a gallon. But by the way, gasoline now is at $2 a gallon, so people realized that they needed to end this subsidy craziness. So what is the size of the tragedy? And I hope you can see this slide. And I just put into big letters and in red the highlights. When it comes to GDP, gross domestic product, GDP collapsed by over 75%. From 2014 to 2020. I mean, can you imagine the economy of the United States dropping 75%? That's a disaster. Peak hyperinflation with annual rates exceeding 300,000% from 2019 to 2020. And there were months in there where inflation registered 160,000%. Fortunately, you have these the systems of electronic transfer funds. So it wasn't like in the past when people had to go around with a cart of bills to pay, so that they could deal with it. But that's the size of the problem. The first two items there generated a huge migration of Venezuelans. Over 8 million Venezuelans left the country. So, and those people were voting with their feet. There would be no way that Maduro could win an election in those conditions. That's how, people knew that they were rigging the elections. The debt is another crisis. I mean, that's going to play out now when we have if we ever get to democracy, we would have to negotiate the debt. But we're talking about anywhere from 150 to 170 billion dollars, and the thing that people look at is the debt to GDP ratio, which is in the case of Venezuela is 180 to 200%. So, and then finally the country risk. Which is high, extremely high, and Venezuela has had the highest rating in the world, in the planet, during Maduro's tenure in government. So this is a disaster, no matter which way you look at it, and the sad part of it is that it is self-inflicted, meaning there was no war, there was no natural disaster, and it is due to mainly corruption I mean, corruption that you have no idea. And I'll give you an idea of the numbers. And then, improvisation, lack of planning, lack of disrespect for economists. The central bank stopped publishing data. When you think about it, it doesn't fit in my head. Where are Venezuelans right now? I just wanted to give you a glimpse. The map on the left is what they call the new demographics of Venezuela. So, but the majority are in Colombia, followed up by Peru. U.S. is high in those numbers, and I have two different sources here, well, 2 different years, but so you would get an idea. This is the worst wave of migration ever after Syria. So just to give you an idea of social welfare, the public health system is in shambles. It's really bad. People get by with private clinics. Education, the whole system is in a crisis for massive migration. And you know this, you all know this, that when you have this massive migration, who are the first to migrate? Educators, people who have an education. And so the primary, middle school, secondary education system have suffered tremendously. And then the universities got a double whammy. On the one hand, the economic situation, and on the other hand, universities are the home of academic freedom. So, to no surprise, most of the public universities were against the government. And so they were cornered, so to speak, and really had a huge problem. Public services, it's a mess all over. Water, electricity, telecommunications, internet. When I talk to my brothers, we have to find spots where they have a connection and I can connect. But that is a problem. Though I have to say that a lot of alternative means of communication have evolved. So, for example, the business school that I work with in Venezuela, they have a good connection, and I teach my class with no interruptions. Just want to give you a glimpse of salaries. Retirees, and I'm a retiree in Venezuela. I make about $49, $50 a month after 35 years of work. And here in the U.S., my Social Security check is close to $4,000 after 18 years of service. So you can tell. Minimum wage, I try to get information as to how things are. And workers, farm workers, and I call some of my friends in the farms, and they're paying $130 a month, which is not bad for what it was a few years ago. But if you put inflation on top of it, it is a problem because you can never catch up. So that gives you an idea of salaries. So I was trying to, when I was thinking about this talk, is how do I convey the idea of a dictatorship taking control of a country? A dictatorship that would take a country like embrace it like this and never let it go. And I asked my friend Grok, artificial intelligence, would you generate a picture for me of an octopus holding Venezuela and not letting go? And Grok did this. So, artificial intelligence, I'm not promoting or advocating, but they're very creative. And then I said, okay, that's not fair with the competition. So I asked ChatGPT, and it came up with this picture. and I asked them Copilot, which is Microsoft, and gave me this picture. But in any case, that is the idea that this tragedy is brought about by this octopus. And then a friend of mine said, well, no, it's not just an octopus. It's an octopus and a parasite that is eating the system from the inside. So you got to portray this biologically correct. Anyways, so let's look at the tentacles of the octopus. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to highlight the first three. The oil production and trade, mostly illegal through ghost fleet and, dark fleet, shadow fleet, clandestine network of tankers. What Transparency International says in their report is that about 20%, 20 to 30% of the oil was traded under the table. And the money never got to the Venezuelan treasury. Imagine the source of revenue of Venezuela with that situation. So, and by the way, this is well documented by the Treasury of the United States, Department of the Treasury, and by the Drug Enforcement Administration. They've tracked the illegal money. And there's a guy by the name of Martin Rodil, a Venezuelan, who specializes in chasing dirty money. And he's the one that has made all these estimates. But this is about 20 to 30% of the oil production goes into the pockets of these individuals. Then there is mining, particularly gold. And Venezuelan Transparency, which is a chapter of Transparency International, they did a little bit of legwork and went to where the gold mines are and checked the names of the companies operating in the area. And they tracked them all back to the family or relatives or friends of the government, particularly Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia. So, by the way, right after the January 3rd, there was a meeting of the Security Council was called in New York at the UN. And they invited Jeffrey Sachs to speak against the sanctions of governments like Maduro, and then they invited Mercedes de Freitas, the president of Venezuela Transparency, to speak about the deals of Maduro's government, and she describes in her presentation all this business that I'm telling you today. Then there is drug trafficking, mostly cocaine. Apparently, the story here is that, and this is a story told by an officer that was in the meeting between Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez. And Fidel Castro told Hugo Chavez in the presidential palace in Caracas, Hugo, we need to find a way to fund our friends in Colombia. The guerrillas, the ELN, the National Liberation Army, and the FARC, the Colombian National Revolutionary Forces. And the way we think we can do that is that you let them pass cocaine through Venezuela. And then once the cocaine in Venezuela moves up north to the U.S. or to Mexico and then into the U.S. And he says, that way, that's a good business because we make money for our friends in Colombia and we hit the U.S. So, this is how much of the size and the ambition of the criminal organization. And then Hugo Chavez had the bright idea of saying, okay, I'm going to give that business to my generals. So that's where the name, the Cartel de los Soles, come from, the Sun Cartel, because generals in Venezuela carry little suns here to show their rank. Now, this is documented, and supposedly one of the officers that was in that meeting is going to testify against Maduro in his trial. So it's not. So the first three items there. The estimate of the Department of the Treasury and the Drug Enforcement Administration is $2.7 trillion that were sucked out of Venezuela by these people in 25 years. Now, you have a situation where this is just crazy. You have a situation where you're taking this money for you personally, and you're letting the Venezuelan people impoverish. It just doesn't make sense, and they call it a revolution. It's just mind-boggling. So the tentacles tend to grow, tend to be more. So I put 8 to be consistent, but I think there are more. This is a special octopus, and then I said I put 2 other things. Context, no check and balances. These people rig the elections every time, so that they could elect Congress, win government, and then elect the Supreme Court from the first 2. And then they took control of the country. So this is how the octopus, from his mind, controls everything. And the brain of the octopus, they established a culture of crime, cruelty, and fear. So even today, the Venezuelans are supposed to have the freedom to speak their minds. They're reserved. I call my brother on the phone and I tell me, I have to give a talk. Give me an idea, and he won't talk to me on the phone. So when you talk about culture of fear, that's what it means. And then in my talk to this council, in 2017, in December, I cited Lech Walesa, the former Prime Minister of Poland, saying this: Venezuela is being held hostage by a group of drug dealers and terrorists. So this is consistent, and the people who were dealing with these items 1, 2, and 3, they've been tracked back. Everything tracked back to the control of Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. And in fact, Celia Flores is cited as the brain, the financial brain of this. By the way, one of the girls this morning, the 7-year-old, asked, "What was the role of Celia Flores in the government?" I said, "No, it's like she was going like she's a saint." No saint, Anyways, so we get to the third act of my talk after January 3rd. How much time do I have? We're good. Okay. So we have Maduro's extraction on January 3rd. The interim government began releasing political prisoners. I believe that more than half political prisoners have been released or are in some kind of conditioned freedom. Immediately after, Trump hosted a meeting of oil executives, and that's where the president of ExxonMobil, worldwide, said Venezuela is uninvestable with the legal framework that they have. And then immediately in January 15, the Oil and Mines Act introduced in Venezuelan National Assembly, and I will just want to point out that it was approved on January 29th. So the interim government in Venezuela is just following instructions from the U.S. And this is interesting because the Congress is an independent body, an independent organization. So, but then, it was functioning before as a lack of check and balances, and it's working now to fast track laws. And then Venezuela has had the visit of the CIA director, John Ratcliffe. So why would the CIA director go to Caracas right after January 3rd? I mean, the intelligence is key here to understand what's going on. Then Laura Dogu has been appointed the key person in U.S.-Venezuela relations, and she opened the embassy, and now we have normal relations. On January 29th, the Venezuelan commercial airspace reopened, and then more licenses were approved. And then U.S. Secretary of Energy Christopher Wright visits Venezuela, and he shows up in the news visiting the oil fields. And then General Francis Donovan, commander of the Southern Command, was in Venezuela. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, and then U.S. Secretary Doug Burgum visited Venezuela to look at the minerals. You know, the first two businesses that I show you in my list of the dark businesses. So there are a few questions here. One, how come on January 3rd, at midnight, there were helicopters, U.S. helicopters, flying over Caracas to capture Maduro? How did that happen? Where were the anti-aircraft defenses? Where were the Ellis warning systems? What happened? Who is behind this? And I'm not going to tell you my story, but I'm going to give you the version of The Guardian. The Guardian says that 5 different sources point to the fact that Maduro was given away, was handed over by Delcy Rodriguez and by her brother Jorge Rodriguez. And then this begs another question: if there was a previous agreement to hand Maduro over to the United States, what is the agreement between Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, and Delcy Rodriguez and Jorge Rodriguez? Are they going to get immunity? By the way, the sanctions to Delcy were lifted. So are they going to get? I mean, if I was Delcy Rodriguez, I would be after immunity, keep my money, the possibility of keeping my money, and third, the ability to reside in the United States, because after all, U.S. is better than Russia, Turkey, or Iran today. Anyways, this is not small potato, as they say, because the U.S. has been accused of violating international law for going into a country like this. But this begs the question: were they invited into the country? I mean, that's what it is. And anyways, I apologize for asking more questions and providing less answers. Now, talking about what is a nice word for treason? Betray. Treason. Okay. Well, this is a picture taken in 2025, January 31st. The fellow on the left is Rick Grenell, the special envoy of the U.S. to Venezuela to negotiate the release of U.S. hostages in Venezuela. And there's Maduro. But look who is in the background with a big smile. Jorge Rodriguez. He's the president of Congress right now. He's one of the ones pointed to as selling out Maduro. So So that's how we got to January 3rd. Like I said, there are more questions than answers on that. And I'm provoking you. So this is Marco Rubio's plan, and I don't have to explain it too much because you probably know it better than I do. There is a step one, stabilization and sort of a quarantine. Recovery and rebuilding, which is where they are right now. And then the last step is a transition, which is democratic elections. Now, where are we now? I think Venezuela needs financial stabilization. You know, the public finances, I think, are in such a disaster that they need to be organized and see, you know, the usual household thing of making revenues meet expenses. So that needs to be resolved. There is one thing that I keep saying, that we're not going to get too far with elections if we don't get the opposition groups enough support within the military. You know, the military have been brainwashed, so that needs to be changed, and I think that's happening right now. The new Minister of Defense prohibited all political propaganda within the military, all political innuendos or whatever. So let's just move on to a more positive thing here. This is the oil production of the red bars are Venezuela in the last 5 years, and we went from 900,000 barrels a day to about half from 2019 to 2020, and then it's been going up since then. And now the projection is that Venezuela might hit the 2.6 to 5 million barrels a day in 10 years, if we get our act together. Now, I put Guyana in there, British Guyana, in green, because British Guyana is a newcomer to the oil industry. And they've been able to increase production from practically zero to 900,000 barrels a day in 5 years. So Venezuela already has infrastructure, has a tradition, has the everything. So you could ramp up production relatively easy. I mean, one of the bottlenecks is electricity, because the electrical network is not that great. Anyways, so can we get an idea of public perception of things before and after the January 3rd? So you can see this is a survey of the Financial Times, and then this was taken the first bar here. Can you see my pointer? No. Let me see if I can get my pointer to. Oh no. Okay. Now you can see the pointer. Well, here you have about 75% of people consulted in 2024 were saying that the government was no good, or bad, or very bad. And then right after January 3rd, everything flips. Public perception of things flipped to 75% on the positive side. And even Chavistas here, those supporters of the government, were saying that things were improving. So you can tell the theory of the octopus grabbing you and not letting you breathe is correct. So who are the players right now? So we have the U.S. government. I'm saying who is in control in Venezuela right now. Well, the U.S., of course, military might, main oil customer. The interim president has control of the military, the security forces, the colectivos, which are the gangs that they put together and provided them with guns and arms, and those are the ones that terrorize the population. They've not been active, but I think they are in latent mode. Like they could awake at any point. They control Congress, and they control the Supreme Court. So what is supposedly happening now is that structure there is being dismantled right now. Not that it is being erased or anything like that, but the Chavista component is being taken out of it. And then we have Edmundo González Urrutia, who won the election in July 28th, 2024, and behind him is Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Prize winner, and they won. I mean, this has been proven time and time again. They won the election by 70% of the vote. So Oh, by the way, there's a political analyst by the name of Carlos Sanchez Berzain, who is a Bolivian fellow. He's director of the Inter-American Institute for Democracy, and he was a former Minister of Government in Bolivia and former Minister of Defense in Bolivia. And he says, we are witnessing the dismantling of the crime corporation by the criminal themselves. That's what he says. So, when the question, what is next? Marco Rubio has a plan, but then the Constitution of Venezuela provides that you have 30 days to call election after the absence of the president is certified, is confirmed, and the Congress confirms it, and the Congress is controlled by who, and and then you're supposed to have 190 days to have the election. 90 days plus an additional 90 days in the Constitution. But then that's after the absence of the president is confirmed by Congress, and that hasn't happened yet. So,
They haven't confirmed that he's gone?
yeah. Well, if you listen to the rhetoric of Chavistas, you will notice that they say that they plan to bring him back, bring Maduro back, and they have to say that everywhere, and that wouldn't be consistent with declaring he's absolute absent. You know what I mean? Maria Corina says that we could hold elections in a year or so. So everybody's on that. U.S. says we can hold elections anywhere from 18 to 24 months. It depends who you ask. So my opinion is that, there are a few things that need to happen. One is that I think the government party, the Partido Socialista Unido Venezolano, the Venezuelan United Socialist Party, I think they need a revamping, because these people failed the Venezuelans, 100%. I think the opposition needs to reorganize itself and reframe and coalesce around a project. I think this might happen, but it might take a while. So in the meantime, Venezuela is a protectorate of the U.S. or a co-government between Trump and Delcy Rodriguez. And like I said, we need to know what the agreement was with those two people because otherwise we don't know. So it's a very fluid situation, changes every week. And then I wanted to close with a positive note. That Venezuela won the 2026 World Baseball Classic in a final match with the U.S. team. That was on March 18th, 2026. And there are some Venezuelans that say, well, this is a confrontation that we did not need a war to win. So sports have always been a good way to settle differences. Anyways, I'm open to questions now. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, I'll moderate the questions. Remember the rules. I hang on to the mic, one question per person. And where do we want to start? We encourage students.
Hand up over here.
Where are we? Okay, great.
Right over here.
Oh, he looks
Good to
like
see
a
you.
high schooler.
Of the $2.7 trillion, you have the first three, oil, gold, and opium. What's the percentage of opium, and is the bombing of the small boats relative to that in any way?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think so. I'm not a government official, but I think you mean cocaine, though.
Cocaine, yeah.
When you look at how the events evolved, the U.S. position, the Navy fleet in front of the Venezuelan coast, and they were going after the boats initially, and then I'm not sure, but I think they realized that they could also block the illegal traffic of oil as well. And they did. They chased out some of the ships that had no flag or no identifying things. But I think, I mean, it was a deterrent. And I was listening to a BBC documentary interviewing people, fishermen who live in the small towns along the coast where the drug boats used to come from. And everybody in the town is saying, you know, why do they kill these people? You know, these are poor people. They, you know, and then the BBC woman asks, you know, what's the size of the business? And they say, well, they would get paid $10,000 a run. Well, what I'm trying to say is that, I mean, that's how it was operating. And it was operating. I mean, these people that argue that there was no significant traffic of drugs from Venezuela to the U.S., I'm not sure if any of you have seen something called a TV series called Catch a Smuggler. It's a National Geographic TV show. I mean, all the along the coast of Venezuela, you see, for example, Aruba and Curacao and the Dutch. They have a surveillance system, and they keep catching boats every day, trafficking not only drugs but humans. You know, people trying to get out of Venezuela. It's the same thing in Puerto Rico, same thing in Dominican Republic, same thing all along that line. So, you know, I'm just telling you what I've read, and this guy Martin Rodil is the one that has the story. And again, you know, he was the one chasing the dirty money, because one thing that I have on my list is money laundering, which is another of the tentacles. And money laundering goes along with the first three, you know.
I think we have another question here from Professor Newnham of Penn State Berks and a World Affairs Board member.
Yeah, my question is, I think, kind of a big one, which is how the oil sales are working now and where the money's going. Because I'm concerned that we're getting into a opaque and illegal situation where the sales are happening and nobody's accounting for the money. And I've heard it's being stashed in Mideast bank accounts. And is it ever going to go back to Venezuela? Is it going to be pocketed by someone else? It's how is that working?
Well, I wish I knew where the money was. No, from what you hear in Venezuela is that the money is kept in a U.S. account, from what I understand, and the money is going back to Venezuela, and the money is being used for the daily auction of dollars that are put into the market, and that's how I understand it is operating. How much of the money is kept somewhere, or I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I think, one of the questions is that after you see all this disaster, who do you trust? Yeah, I don't know what the number is. I know it's not enough. That I know. And that's why there's a lot of pressure on the exchange rate. And there's a lot of pressure on inflation.
Another question from Rodney LaPearl.
Yes, sir. A number of times when you visited in the past, I asked this question, so I'll ask it again. As I understood from you, a large number of Venezuela's best petroleum engineers years ago relocated to Canada. Do you think it's time for them to go back home?
That's a very good question. And that was a very good question, Randy. I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to judge by myself. If you ask me, I'm not an oil expert or oil person, but if you ask me if I was going to go back to Venezuela today, I said I would not. My kids are here. They've grown roots here. My grandkids are here. Now, I see the same pattern. I have friends, Venezuelan friends, who were in the oil industry in Canada, in Alberta, and they probably you'll get 1 out of 3 who is willing to go back and willing to serve Venezuela. And there's a core of Venezuelans in Houston particularly who are the ones who've drafted policy and plans for the oil industry, assuming that that things go back to normal. So, I would say that that number must be at about anywhere from 40 to 50% of people wanting to return. Now, I can tell you that there are a lot of Venezuelans in the U.S. that have not been able to get a good command of the language, and that makes it difficult for them. They have not adapted to the way. I mean, if there is anything called the Venezuelan way, people are not happy with being stopped by the police and asking driver's license and so there's a discipline aspect to this but I would say that I'm going to guess that about half of people who were in the oil industry would like to go back. though I don't think they're going to go back to the jobs they had. And then the other thing is that, take someone like me. And I mean, I was 50 some when I came to the U.S. I'm now 70, almost 80. And, who's going to hire me?
Yeah, before my question, I'd like to add to the conspiracy theories you suggested earlier. Easiest one I've heard is that with the arrest of Maduro, the United States government actually pulled off what's called a reverse ICE. We imported an illegal alien to Brooklyn. Very simple, but my question...
Hey, David, he has a question.
My question is, I've been reading about how with the United States taking over Venezuelan oil, that it's pretty much destroying the Cuban economy now. Is that accurate as far as how much Cuba depended on Venezuela?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is again sad, because what happens is that Maduro had a fascination with Cuba. He was... I'm going to say educated, and then at the same time I'm going to say indoctrinated in Cuba. And he was giving away oil to Cuba, against the situation in Venezuela. So Cuba depended on Venezuela. But not only that, and I have it in one of my tentacles, is that Cuba had a contract with Venezuela. The Cubans were running the national identification system. They were running the notaries. They were running the business registration systems, and they were getting paid for that. And then the other thing that Cubans were doing was providing protection to Maduro. There was an elite force that was taking care of Maduro, and the Cubans denied this all the time, and the Venezuelan government denied it all the time. But then the Cuban government honored 32 soldiers of their elite force who died protecting Maduro on January 3rd. And then, there was no question that, and the unofficial reports is that it wasn't 32 Cubans that died in that operation, it was 80. So, they're.
I'm going to take advantage of the mic here. Were you surprised, were the Venezuelan people surprised that after the U.S. deposed Maduro, they didn't engage with Machado as the duly elected, democratically elected president of Venezuela, and instead continued to work with Del Rey?
That's not only a very good question, a tricky question, because this is my opinion. I think Maria Corina and the opposition groups, they have no leverage within the military or within any group, armed group. So they're vulnerable, and so they. I don't think they. I think it is not good timing to bring Maria Corina, and I think these people, Marco Rubio and Trump and all his people, I think probably they have more information about Venezuela than we think. They have more information about Maria Corina. They have more information about Delcy. I mean, think about this. Think about this guy, Rick Renell, who had been negotiating with Jorge Rodriguez and Delcy for a few years now. Think of a conversation where Rick Renell is telling Delcy and Jorge, look, Delcy and Jorge, this is what we have about you. This is how we know you have embezzled this money. We know the businesses that you're in, and you know this justice system in the U.S. We're not going to let go. We're not going to justice is going to prevail. So you guys either run now or make a deal or whatever. So that's what I think.
We have another student question. Penn State student. What's your name? And
My name is Balor, and I have a question regarding current U.S. influence in Venezuela, and if the U.S. government has made any statements regarding what would happen to Venezuela after the elections.
thank you.
When I showed the slide about the baseball game, not only I wanted to show how we share culturally a lot of things, and baseball is one of them. I don't know if you noticed that the baseball players in the Venezuelan selection that won that game, the majority of them are from a little town, fishing town called La Sabana. I'm just making the point that there is a huge influence of the U.S. Culture on Venezuela.
Government influence, like economic, not cultural.
Well, no, I was going to get there. Remember, the oil industry in Venezuela was discovered. The oil as a resource was discovered early in the 20th century, 1915, somewhere around there. And Venezuela was a producer of oil, and I think the company that started it was Standard Oil of New Jersey, one of the Rockefeller companies. And so they ramp up production. That's how Venezuela entered the 20th century. So the oil industry was run by U.S. companies. Well, not U.S. They were European. There was Shell. There was Exxon. There was I'm not sure they changed names, but Chevron. The oil industry was run from around 1915 till 1975, when the government decreed the nationalization of the oil industry. And even then, they had to make deals with the U.S. companies to continue operations. So what I'm trying to say that business-wise, Venezuela has always been in the sphere of the U.S. So I don't see a problem. By the way, I wanted to avoid to get into the trap of a debate with Trump. But when Trump says they love me in Venezuela, it is true. I mean, in the streets, people are, they praise Trump. So I don't foresee any problems. I mean, look at a place like Cuba. U.S. citizens go to Cuba for tourism, and the hook for tourists to come to Cuba is the lineup of all U.S. cars. And that's just reminiscent of the influence that the U.S. had on Cuba and how they've not let it go. Why aren't they their Chinese cars or Soviet cars?
Because Cuba used to be a U.S. colony. Because Cuba used to be a U.S. colony.
No, but I'm saying they've been under Soviet, I wouldn't say rule, but Soviet influence or Chinese influence or European influence. Why is it that the cars have not been replaced by the new influence?
Because of embargoes.
No, I'm just asking the question.
Another Penn State student. Your name?
My name is Atsuli Hernandez Sanchez, and you mentioned how there's still Chavistas in Venezuela. Why do you think he still has supporters even after everything that Venezuela has gone through under his rule?
Good question.
That's a tough question. to answer, because I have relatives who are Chavistas, and you argue with them, and they will say that no, it is because of the sanctions. They never let us function. It's because of this. It's because of that. I don't know. There's always been like a 20% vote, hardcore vote to Chavez or to his group. Is it the anti-imperialism mind? Is it the what is it? I don't know. One thing I do know is that they took Maduro out and nobody said anything. And this is where I say that silence speaks volumes.
So, Paul, are you optimistic on the future of Venezuela now?
No, I am optimistic. It depends where the circles that you go to. I went to a talk on the oil industry by three experts, one of them Venezuelan, and another one who had grown with the oil industry in Venezuela. And they talk about ramping up production of oil to 2.6 to about anywhere from 2.6 to 5 million barrels a day in the next 10 years. And these are people, by the way, because I've tracked them, that were skeptics at the beginning when the snatching of Maduro occurred. And they were saying, oh, it's not going to work. Remember, you get a mixed bag of people giving opinions, or so you get opinions of those who love the snatching of Maduro, but who hate Trump. And so they have this, I think that they don't concede to anything to Trump. So you get those people. But in this one meeting, I saw optimism. And it's the same thing with the gold and minerals. I haven't heard anything about drugs.
It's probably a good note to wrap up on.
Okay. Paul, thank you so much for your presentation today. We really enjoyed everything you had to share with us, as we always have. We'd like to give you a gift from the World Affairs Council.
Thank you.
A little reminder of Berks County
Oh, yeah.
in a plate, but thanks again. We really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Lynn.